Welcome, friends, to a reading and conversation celebrating Calipia's Daughter by the one and only Devorah Major, San Francisco's third poet laureate and poet in residence of the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco. Joining Devorah are two of the Bay Area's finest poets, Jason Bayani and James Cagney. I'm Aileen Cassinetto, Poet Laureate of San Mateo County, and co-hosting with me is Dr. Kim McMillon, and editor of Black Fire, this time forthcoming from Willow Books in 2021. This event is part of the San Mateo County Libraries virtual Bookfest. Kim, would you care to say a few words of welcome? Kim, can you please unmute?
Hi there. I want to welcome everyone today. My name is Kim McMillon, and I'm just so entranced by all three poets. Now, there's a couple of ground rules for today. I would like to ask everyone to please mute all microphones and please keep them muted until it's time for you to speak. If anyone has any questions for our featured readers, please just type them in the chat box during our Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Now, without further ado, please welcome our first reader, Jason Bayani, the author of Locus, published by Omnidon in 2019, and Amulet from Write Bloody Publishing in 2013. Jason is an MFA graduate from St. Mary's College, a Kundiman Fellow, and works as the Artistic Director for Kearney Street Workshop, the oldest multidisciplinary Asian Pacific American arts organization in the country. His publishing credits include World Literature Today, Muzzle Magazine, and Lantern Review, among others. Jason performs regularly around the country and debuted his solo theater show Locus of Control in 2016 with theatrical runs in San Francisco, New York, and Austin. Welcome, Jason Bayani.
Hi, thank you for having me. Yeah, it's an honor getting to read to celebrate Devorah's newest book, and so I'm just do a couple poems. Thank you for having me here, and great to read with you all today. So the first piece I wanted to read is I think it's a pretty common thing to revisit creation myths, and I wanted to do my own version of doing that with the Filipino creation myth. So it starts with a quote by Nick Joaquin. The world was always going to be remade by people who were too busy to remake themselves first and left the world twice as miserable as before. Nick Joaquin. It was said that in the beginning there was only the sea and the sky, not a spot of land, and only the flying animals living between. And the waters were quiet, and the skies were always still, and yet everything moves around them, and there must be something that moves them too. When we become aware of our wants, isn't it then that we understand we are helpless to time, as all things must be? And this is what stirs the water, and this is how the sky becomes wind, and when the wind was shook, it learned to thunder, and then the sea and the sky became all their wants awakening. How even the sky can deliver water, even the water can bear the fire. And this is what happens, and this is what makes the land. This is how the gods love. And when the land woke, they whispered to the rain, and it has never stopped falling. In time, the wind above the land and the wind above the sea gave birth to the bamboo. And the bamboo was strong and it was beautiful. And because it is both of these, it split itself in two. And we walked out believing we could only be one or the other, that we are either strength or beauty, and not that the plant would cleave itself, because it believed we too should be both. In another version of the myth, intercolonial revisionism, the first man and the first woman give birth to many children, trait commonly attributed to the poor and uneducated. They become unruly over time. The Filipino, as unruly, uneducated, and savage, justifies the subjection to a more advanced culture. And in his frustration, the first man begins to beat them. Normalization of patriarchal violence. And they scatter in hiding. Those who find the well-hidden rooms in the house are the ones who become the leaders. Those who have hidden in the walls, the slaves. Establishment of caste systems is ingrained order. The ones who hid in the fireplace turn dark and eventually retreat to the jungle, othering and disenfranchisement of indigenous cultures. And the ones who escape the house, they are the free men who come back as the white explorers. Glorification of whiteness, reframing the conqueror's savior. The first inhabitants of the Philippines are likely the ancestors of yet the people, likely to be the Austronesian seafarers, which gives them a shared lineage with the Aborigines in Australia and the inhabitants of several islands in the Pacific, including Fiji and Vanuatu, among others. Because the Eta had lived in the mountains, they were untouched by Spanish colonization and been able to preserve their customs and their culture. And this begins to remove them from the Filipino identity. When they lose their homes, because untouched people live in untouched areas that are filled with resources, it's easy to believe that this is happening somewhere else. When they start dying, it becomes easy to see it happening to someone else. What a shame, someone might think. Them, that's who the dying happens to, them. Though where they reside is within the borders you believe you live in. There inside are the other borders. And as Enzel Dua says, borders are set up to define the places that are safe and unsafe, to distinguish us from them. They say that when you look up in the sky, you're not only seeing all the universe, but all of time as well. The moon marks 1 second behind, Mars 8 minutes, Saturn 49. Every light is another year past, proceeding to 13.8 billion. I understand best where I am in the context of a sun and its orbiting planets, less so within a galaxy, even less within a cluster. I was born a Christian, so for me, time starts at year 0. And everything before then is another solar system, another galaxy. The oldest human bones discovered date back to 2.8 million years. Some of the oldest found in the Philippines goes back to 67,000. The first city, 7,400. All of it dwarfing the stretch of time to which I am adhered. All of it, another life and another light in the sky. I think one of the most commonly loved songs in Tagalog songs is Dahil Sa'yo. And I think a lot of Filipinos also have a Dahil Sa'yo poem. And I wrote a piece myself. Dahil Sa'yo, roughly translated, means because of you. Few Tagalog songs are more beloved. It's part of a specialized genre of love songs called the kundima. My parents told me that one of their favorite versions was sung by Nat King Cole when he visited the Philippines in 1961. In the recording, you can hear the audience gasp when he draws out the first da and quivers in the heel. And as he adapts to this new language, more so does the language adapt to his music. It was said afterwards, people were calling him the man with the refrigerator in his voice because when he sang, it was effortlessly cool. How effortlessly he understood how to extend into the right notes to convey every moment of longing and devotion that makes it a true kundiman. During Spanish colonization, Filipinos were prevented from outward displays of cultural pride to quell any potential uprising. So they used the kundiman to express these sentiments, master love of the people in the land, and the songs of devotion to romantic love. Dahil sa'yo, nais kong mabuhay. Because of you, I want to live. In this, we know love is both amorous and revolutionary. How easily Nat King Cole dove into this tune. Who understood what every person of color who makes art in America comes to know. Our bodies are politicized, and so will everything these bodies make. Even in a love song, you have no mistake. You have no escape. I think I'm gonna do one more poem. I'm just do this short poem, then I'll do one more. It's called Notes on Maps. 7,000 miles between Manila and San Francisco, 14 hours west to east, 12 hours east to west. The planet spins counterclockwise, pulling the atmosphere along with it. This is counterintuitive. To move into the spin should serve to shorten the distance traveled. Movement occurs on both sides of the line. But to fly back home is to fly against the Earth itself. Between these 2 points is the only thing that ever increases. The only thing that ever increases is time. Only memory, the story told, the story in our own hands that is time reclaimed. Everything we can remember is unbeholden to distance. Thank you.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much, Jason. Now, please welcome our next reader, James Cagney, a poet from Oakland. James is a Cave Canem Fellow and BANA alum, both programs that foster Black writers. James has performed in venues and museums throughout the San Francisco Bay Area and beyond. His first book, Black Steel Magnolias in the Hour of Chaos Theory, won the Josephine Miles Pen Award in 2019 and is available from Nomadic Press. Welcome, James Cagney.
Thank you for having me. I just wanted to send my love to everybody who helped make this afternoon happen. My love to Jason and Devorah. It's an honor to get to read with you. And I just wanted to send a quick shout out and love to QR Hand, a friend of mine who's not feeling very well this week. Let me start with a poem from the book. This poem is called "The Fire in Her Eyes Redefines an Apple." The ritual of fruit begins again in June, when buckets of smiling plums and blistered peaches arrive for her in cars, altering our kitchen into a steaming workshop. Soon blackened pots boil with our life's winter blood. She quickly buries the dead in a cemetery of sugar, where apricots and pears await to be baptized and born again as jam and jelly. Late summer brings chopped cabbages, cucumbers, and ancient spices, all bathed in a sauna of hot vinegar and crushed red peppers. The walls of our kitchen come alive with the sweat of our ancestors who live again through recipes. The dead continue to feed the living with greasy fingers, stuffing our mouths with history's sweet cuisine. Mama leads us to her garden and motions over a brief field of greens, their vibrant tongues lapping sunlight like thirsty dogs. She tells us this is a lost art and warns that our wives will be useless to our children. Weeping, she presents the bouquet of her hands, fragrant with 40 years of stewed tomatoes, summer squash, sweet corn, and candied yams. She forecasts her death and instructs us to sprinkle her body with salt until her skin appears wild with dandelions. Place her in our biggest pot and simmer to a low gravy. Seal her in a cool, dry place and wait until the fog of poverty settles in the valley of our ignorance, when there is only rainwater, credited bread, and the memory of meat. And a bunch of new short poems. This was inspired by watching, what's his name, hold up a Bible. And this poem is called "The Flames of Genesis." Every night I am murdered in my sleep, only to awaken radiant and naked beneath dawn's monsoon of blood. This white Genesis occupied by the proudly illiterate after labeling the tree of knowledge a controlled substance. Every night the bushes open its jaws of switches and my shift begins anew. The job in this garden of perennial thistles I'm forced to sharecrop. Name the bite style of each fresh animal rushing from the double-gated house above me. Describe the complex flavors in poisoned saliva, pepper, citrus, rust. Tag ivory monuments in bubble lettering, new words for being spat out and eaten again. Determine the fine tasting notes between mauling for recreation or slaughter triggered by fear. I am made in the image of illegally moving targets. My ribs open nightly, blossom of beef mushrooms, its aroma singing to the sky. Night opens its drooling jaws in praise of me. This is a memory poem. This is called Inheritance. I am the dustpan on kitchen floors of 7 great-grandmothers. My macrame DNA chain a potpourri of cornbread crumbs and goose feathers, swept out one back door, whipped through another. I am the tongue of last Sunday's soloist, still in vibrato. My horoscope a circular arc of lives repeating through me. My father spit me out between tipperillos. I am the yolk of certain truths he was unable to swallow, but his, all his, lit and slid from the end of the bar. It is not me, but the ghosts moving through me that needs to kick the walls, throw the porcelain. The revival drums its snake-throwing Pentecost. There are rituals of ripple, purification through gun smoke, and a few words said over a pool table ignited with whiskey. If you catch me hollering on the lawn to an earth erupting hurt, know that it isn't me who screams, but the foaming gumbo pot of men and women simmering through time. All my shit-talking uncles, onshore leave, poured out, set on fire, hung like an ornament for making too many books in spades. Oops. This, I'm gonna do 2 more poems and we'll let that be that. This is called The Invention of Intimacy. We liked one another better than our fathers liked us. Our favorite stories were always myths involving vanquishing, soldiers eaten down to the bone, cities exploding to the joy of waltzing monsters, wrestlers locking, cradling, adjusting another's will, mechanics of pain. We kick-started together once we realized blood had flavor, anything with aroma, a plastic action figure, a ribbon of ripped fabric, a golden thigh, a spray of hair, its bushy rabbit, the soft medicinal roux of a tongue tracing, folding, Greco-Roman pantomimes. Touch me like you're blind. My ribs, my spine rhyme in braille. Punctuation in hair, tiny commas, stuttering periods on sentences left incomplete. Thought bubbles, hiccuping ellipses. Pretend it's a joke toppling you into tickles. On the tarot card, the Tower, 'twas a joke that sent everything tumbling. Is this too inside, like short clothes being seasoned for laundry? Red briefs, rare interior, scalding broth, spilling, spraying, springs, droplets. Boys armed with flowers, promoted to guns or swords, beaten senseless on the fence post. Dancing dirty, auditioning for hell, nasty as shovels for ditches or spoons still needing to be licked. And this, sure, I wrote this for my uncle living in Delano, California, from a memory from the mid-70s. I thought about Robert Johnson's and the legend of him discovering the blues at the crossroads and wondered what houses, who lives at the crossroads? What is that neighborhood like? And I thought of my uncle's house here in California. This is called House of Slams and Hollers, and this is my last poem. Who occupies the storefront houses at the crossroads? Shotgun houses like abandoned churches. One house slouched behind the musty aroma of trees. Windowsill radio chatters like a bird on caffeine. The living room smells swampy with ashes and bottle caps. Kitchen of vintage graveyard shift coffee, boiled viceroys, cicadas with exoskeletons of brandy, and chickens chained in the backyard. Night turns over, haunted with moths. Air cooled with shuffled decks and howling hounds missing hell. The methane of certain ghosts gets drawn like window shades, dealt in, poured shots at this place where the road crosses its legs like a gentleman. Here lies the uncharted territories of some blues, stigmata blues, razor blade blues, blues for lips just out of reach, blues screaming blouses of plaster down bedroom walls. Choirs of apocalypse blues ignite the red wicks of their tongues, sing harmony to calm Bluegill River for Saturday's baptism of hot lead. Dawn rises with fire on its mind, takes off its top hat, names smile from its mouth in comets, false crosses. Anything not already on the ground, holding on, praying, done grabbed a guitar, a shotgun, and ran. All right, thank you guys very, very much.
Thank you so much, James. Now it is my honor and great pleasure to introduce Devorah Major, San Francisco's third Poet Laureate. Devorah is an award-winning poet and fiction writer, creative nonfiction writer, performer, editor, and adjunct professor at California College of the Arts. Devorah is also poet in residence of the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco. Her most recent book is Califia's Daughter, published by Willow Books this year. Former U.S. Poet Laureate Juan Felipe Herrera has described Califia's Daughter as all the dimensions of Devorah Major's life and yours are here from the beginning, before the beginning, galactic particles to the bebopness of our lives. She speaks of being, of becoming, of totality. In this work, Devorah charts the infinite music inside of us all. Please welcome Devorah Major.
Thank you. And thank you, Jason and James. I kind of wanted you guys to read longer. I liked hearing it all. Okay, I'm going to just read from a Califia's Daughter. And I'm going to start with a quote from Garcia Rodriguez de Montalvo's book, The Adventures of Esplandia, which was written in 1510. And let me say this, that Senor Montalvo would travel from Spain to West Africa, where he heard myths and things. And on West Africa are the Kalifuna Mandinka. And so it's believed that he wrote from an African myth this story of Queen Califia, but this is from his book. Know ye that at the right hand of the Indies, there is an island called California, very close to that part of the terrestrial paradise which was inhabited by Black women. They were robust of body, with strong, passionate hearts and great virtue. The island itself is one of the wildest in the world on account of bold and craggy rocks. And so from that, Cortez, whose ship had 200 Blacks on it, Africans, wrote, named California Califia because that's what he thought would be there, Black people on these craggy rocks. So this first one is her song. So this is Califia speaking. My heart does not sing songs of hate, fear, or regret. For my name will be braided into the lightning of time. Califia, daughter of seafaring Mandinka, queen of Amazon defenders, tamer of wild beast. I have ridden the backs of griffins to come to these rocks, where clothed in sea crystals, draped gold and the evening's wind, I savor freedom's harvest. And so we who are all in California now have her song. And as I am California born, I am indeed one of her daughters. And I had these poems picked out, but then, Jason, I decided to do my creation, although mine doesn't go back as far as yours does. I'm only dealing with the creation of humankind. And but it's called Creation Paradox. Let's see. I may need a bookmark. Here we are. We hold the great-great-grandparents of our ancestors' grandparents in our bloodstreams, in our stomachs, in our hearts. Thousands of years rest inside our souls. In those years lives the record of our beginning. It is the sweetest marrow in our spine, the cleanest shine in our eyes, the open side of our laughter. You can read it in the lines on the soles of our feet. When we retell the stories of where we came from, we draw back tree branches to find hidden fruits which we savor, pointed thorns which make us bleed, the yesterdays that led to here, the heres that lead to tomorrow. When we go back to the beginning, we find the stars. In the beginning, there was a time, we all say, when we were not. After that time, we became. We were created. We were molded. We were spat out. We were sung into until we learned how to make, what to form, where to spit, why to sing. But once, long ago, in the beginning, there was only one, and from the one others were born, and out of those many came us. That is the story we all tell. But before that beginning, before the in the beginning, when we were born, there must have been another beginning. Before the spider crafting web, laying 16 eggs, before the mountain birthing lovers, birthing children, before the sky settling low to mate with earth, before light, before darkness, before breath even, there must have been another beginning. A beginning that lives in a place we call unknowable, yet it is braided into our genealogies. And it is said that it is in this beginning, the beginning before our beginning, it is there that you must go if you want to find the faces of God. Thousands of years, thousands and thousands of years rest inside our souls. I always think it's interesting, the idea that I guess modern society, we always have this place where we began, you know, and there's, you know, like, but it didn't begin there, you know, it didn't begin there, you know. My grandchild was fussing at me and I said, you know, I've known you half your life. And she looked at me like, what? No, you haven't. I was somewhere before I was here. Okay, let me see. I have a plan. Oh, I wanted to read this one. Evidently, because of my blood type, there are many on this planet who say that I am an alien from outer space. And I saw this documentary once. Well, it was on aliens, so maybe one doesn't think it's a documentary. But anyway, in it was a actual African elder griot. And he was standing out dressed in all of his things. And he says, oh, yes, we are told stories of before the moon was here. And then the moon came. And then, you know, these beings came down and they actually seeded the earth. And so I actually looked up, like, could there even be an earth without a moon? And in fact, there can. The waves are very mild. The seasons are different. Certain animals would not exist, but there would be an earth. And there could be humans on that earth. That there's nothing that contradicts that. So anyway, I was at the Museum of the African Diaspora, and there was a picture by Ruby Oniyechi Arnanza called The Spaceship. And it's kind of abstract with these couple of weird alien type people, and I was attracted to it. And this poem came out of my being told I was an alien and this painting. Ancient alien theorists say my blood reveals my true origins, that I began in outer space. Perhaps I came from those who speak of ancient kin, who looked from African peaks eons ago to a sky who held no moon before the visitor ship arrived and left their seeds among us. There are many clues to my origins. My feelings have almost always been an outsider, never quite fitting in anywhere, despite my excellent human form camouflage. My resistance to the idea of borders, my refusal from early childhood to pledging allegiance to one small earth plot when the universe is so inconceivably vast. My carrying a passport, but being without one true homeland. My missing the innate human impulse towards war and domination. My fascination with the stars, and my conviction that I am a space traveler, all paint to my existence as alien. I have, in fact, circumnavigated the sun more than 60 times during my life, always keeping about 93 million miles away, which still doesn't eliminate all sunburns. Sun Ra spoke often of being a Venusian, so I'm hardly the first or the only alien. Indeed, this planet is full of aliens, but not all of us know it or care to. So that's my alien poem. And I just came, as I said, from my meeting my new granddaughter, Iniko Amore, born in troubled times with love. And so I thought I would do a few family poems. I'm going to start with this little one called My Growing Home. Open breaths, jazz jam laughter, family as salve and thorn, blankets cradling in winter frost, fragrant spices wafting, the safety to be wrong or awkward, silly and sublime, a chorale of freedom. And that's followed by Daddy's Girl. This little baby, she loves her mama, but her mama's feeding her, okay? But she is already a daddy's girl. Like, she hears his voice and her little, she turns his head to try and focus on him. And so I was a daddy's girl. So this is my poem. Always been a daddy's girl, just because of the way he liked to watch me grow stronger or brighter or even crazier. Thought I could expand forever, yet still be safe in his strong daddy arms. As words seduced me, tortured and amused me, made me their tool and toy, never thought through this string we share, this legacy of syllables. My mother chanted peace as my father demanded struggle, and I learned how to spell rebel and rebel under his watch. The trees I climbed, the kites I flew, the dances I spun, the words I crafted grew from his boisterous laugh, scary discipline, watchful dominion. If I am woman true, it is because I've grown as daughter of a father who showed me how to swing and when to duck, and why to never stop reaching for the redolent spirals of freedom. Yeah, I was quite the daddy's girl. I miss him. So, and I wanted to do one because when you have kids, well, I guess different people want different things. Some people have actual goals for their children. I wanted my children to be happy, and I wanted them to be good people and to have good souls. And I wanted them to flourish, and I wanted them to give and know love. I didn't care what they did. I didn't, I don't. I was good if they did all the other things. So I'm going to do a poem I wrote for my son because he has more than succeeded all of that, as has my daughter. It's just with time, and since I just left his house. And this is called For the Record. And what I did was I took a poem for my son, Iwa. Iwa means of good character. And he is of good character. He definitely inhabited his name. And it was near when Shaka Sankofa, who had committed a crime at the age of 17, was executed at the age of, I believe, 27. And it was like, how do you do that? How do you kill somebody who was a child and didn't get it yet? And they say that the male brain is not fully mature until 25, whereas the female is at 18. Well, to me, that means that you've got to give, room. Anyway, so this is for my son and for the young men who are in prison because of when they were young, what happened to them. An eye for an eye and we'll all be blind. That's Gandhi. I watched my son move into manhood, the music video slant of last year's Step, translated to a wider stride that intones his name. Man of good character, he saunters with more than sinews and bone. My son makes his own air when the oxygen is in short supply. My son is blood of purpose, heart of resolve, lips of laughter. He calculates, computes, splits ideas, delineates, assesses, adds and subtracts, recombines the moments of his days and moves forward. My son has never been beaten until his brain scabbed or been trapped in a childhood of bruising injustice. My son was not produced inside frosted crack pipes, seeking a mother constantly disappearing into wisp of acrid smoke. He was not chased into closets, under beds, down dark alleys by large-fisted, black-booted men disguised as fathers or uncles or friends. I watch my son unwrap his future like a child at a first birthday party, tearing apart the colorful paper, getting caught up in the string, not knowing what to play with first. Yet the brighter his glow, the more I see the other boys, these children still who would be men, who pace in chains and shaved heads around a future that makes bowels liquid, bladders weak, and faces contort as they add stars to the tattered flag that shines on this nation's affliction, their arms tied down and filled with vengeance's poison. My son sings his songs each night. I listen to the notes that hold inside the cries of these boys who would have been men if given a road, if offered a dream. And I'm going to end with cycles because there's so much leaving right now, leaving of the planet. There's so much having to let go. And there's so much having to keep it in perspective. And it's hard sometimes. It's hard sometimes to keep things in perspective. And so this is my poem, originally written to honor a young woman named Amilca Mutan Fuentes, who died at the age of 27 from leukemia. Sorry, I haven't quite gotten to it. And I realized that I had to look at, and it's not just cycles. There's so many things that we lose, not just that people in death, but jobs and friends and dreams and so much, and how to make peace with it. In this season, this harsh, uncompromising season, in this season, which will be one of the 2,000 seasons through which we sift the grains of our experience, as we learn how to make a better now, as we learn why to maintain a more compassionate how. In this gray, though radiant time, there is so much loss, a freedom, a liberty, a confidence in the inevitability of love, or the unwavering surety that there are more kind people in the world than cruel, more people full of caring than bitter with apathy, that there is more resolve than fear, more possibility than tragedy. And then there are the inevitable deaths, the losses of those whose absences create spaces that seem to be bordered only by the edges of eternity, spaces that we try to embroider over with memories and photographs, anecdotes and tears, creating a silken filigree that can be torn apart by the softest breeze, until we are left again with the deep bowl of sadness that makes up so much of these days, these times. In this season, when we are shown that our lives have become unending lessons on receiving golden gifts that we must inevitably let go of. Over and over again, we must receive and let go. Receive and let go. Receive and let go with blessings and with grace. What are our lives but pushing and climbing through, understanding who and what we love, who and what we lost has not in truth been wrenched from our arms or quietly slipped away, has not disintegrated or been destroyed, but has instead been transformed into another purpose, into another form. What is this journey as human, but passage through and over infinite crossroads, which offer up pain and celebration as our wings beat against and finally break through this tight cocoon of life? And what is life but loss and gain inside the music of our breath? And what must we learn but to forgive and to surrender, but to love and to let go, but to place no more and no less weight on our tears than on our laughter. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Devorah. How true and how wise. Before I pass the mic to Kim, I just wanted to say how some of the poems today made me think of Hippolytus' journey in Lovecraft country, and the power of naming and myth making. So can you tell us a bit about your process, how you put together your most recent work, and perhaps Devorah can answer first?
Okay. Well, I decided I wanted to do a book. A lot of people think of me in terms of the politic and social poetry, and I'm always writing a lot of poetry about where I come from and my family and myself, but I see myself as an alien, somewhat intergalactic. And so I started pulling together poems that were, I didn't share any of them today, but that were really in how we came here and how we entered from the stars, and then myself as of my African heritage is West Indian. I'm Bahamian and Jamaican, but the family that I know is the Bahamian family. And it was very interesting because I was always a little bit weird and different, and I thought it was just because of my parentage, my ancestry immediately. And then I realized after having kids and like that, it was because I actually was brought up as a Caribbean Black person, which is not quite the same as an African American. We share a commonality of being brought here and enslaved, but in the Caribbean, we freed ourselves a little earlier, and we were able to keep more of our culture, and particularly the British Caribbean is very stiff. Frankly, they're very formal and British, and this is where the fork goes and the knife, and you wait till the oldest person picks up their fork before you can eat, and all of these things that I thought was just like my family's little idiosyncrasies. So I started pulling together things that tried to reflect on all of that. And I have a poem for my daughter and my son. My parents had passed, so the poems I have for them are pretty much almost dead or death poems. And then poems of healing and poems of writing, because it's so integral to me, and my father was a writing. So I tried to put together all of this to do this portrait that was a bit more interior and personal than the other books I've done.
Thank you, Devorah. Jason?
Well, I mean, as far as, the kind of the piece put together, I think a lot of it just came from, I don't know, just having a fascination with with just myths across cultures, but also like being able to look at the particular Philippine myths, and understanding how it's kind of changed over time and how that was affected by colonization, how particular systems influence the way that the myths get told, and that this idea that then if that's the case, then there is agency to craft and recraft the myths for the present as well, and for present sensibilities.
And James?
And then I guess that falls on me. So the open secret in my book, I guess, is that I was adopted as a baby, and learned that as an adult. The key words in your question were naming and myth making. And what I was thinking is, the family that actually raised me, the closest family that actually raised me, are pretty much all dead. And I realized that a lot of my memories of them is kind of unprovable and exclusively my responsibility. It's sort of like, at this point, those people, because they were not artists, they were regular folks. They didn't spend time trying to create something long lasting outside of me. But the people that actually raised me, they would vanish were it not for my ability to just tell story. And, I was thinking too, about a month ago, I listened to a reading from Francine Harris, who talked about artists and poets' specific archives. And I realized that I am creating and relying not only on like a personal archive of material and stuff only I had access to, stuff that people born in the last 20 years would literally have to Google, but I'm stuffing my work with material that is familiar to me, is part of my life, and is important for a certain time period in this country. And I think it's important to just share for other generations. And I realize I am sort of, mythologizing both my life and the life that raised me. It's important to try to tell the truth and to try to keep track of all of those stories and to be as honest as possible. But yeah, it is essential more than anything, I guess, for all of us to make sure that we name, mythologize, and archive stuff that is exclusive to who we are and what made us, because all that material is due to be lost if we don't take care of it and somehow infuse it into our work. So yeah, that's what I got.
Exactly. Thank you, James. Kim, do you have anything to add?
I just love what they all said. I love the idea of naming and creating our own myths. I think as writers, it's very important to have a grounding in your art, because I remember growing up and telling people, oh yeah, I'm a writer, and being told things like, well, you better get a job and better get a business degree and forget about the humanities, they don't make money. And so it's very important that you create your own legacies. You make sure that you document your life, because I think particularly other writers will understand its importance. I mean, you may not find that everyone does, but you're important to the planet, and it should be always remembered. I had a couple of questions for Devorah. Devorah, speaking of aliens, um, of course, one of my favorite poems of yours is when you speak on aliens, when you speak about your feelings. And I just love that poem on being an alien in outer space. And so what I wondered is, do you ever think about the possibility that, and you've really answered it, that perhaps you are an alien? Perhaps you're an alien among us, brought down to earth to basically give us information through poetry. Or perhaps you are an alien who decided, I'll try an earth lifetime and see what that's going to be like. You know, I've been in the Pleiades, I've lived on Venus, I've been a floating kind of blob in another dimension. So, or and maybe even an angelic dimension. So I'm wondering, did you have a point when you were, as you were little, to realize I am not like other people? There's something different about me, and the need for you to write about that.
Oh, I was never like other people. I was always weird. I don't know if that's a good thing, but it's the truth. Yeah, I never really did. When I have the things like I never, and still, unless I'm like with my family, I never fit in. I make a good faking of it. I can fake it, but I'm never just wholly comfortable what I know comfort is. And I don't know where all of that comes from. I just know that feeling of otherness. And I do think that I was actually, I consider it blessed that when my father and my mother decided to get married and have what turned out to be my older brother, they cut a deal. And the deal was that my brother and I, well, there was only my brother then, were not to be we're not to be forced into any religious school of thought. We were to be allowed to go wherever we asked to go. No, they would not say no. So I was with my friends. I was with my Catholic friend and my Lutheran friend and my Baha'i friend and my Jewish friend and my Baptist friend. I got to go. The landlord was so afraid I was growing up as a heathen, so she took me a lot. They were the Baptists that went to church in the middle of the week too. And so I got to do all of that, and it gave me this real sense of different ideas, and then of becoming and who we are as humans. And I didn't have one script, because if you're given one script when you're really young, that's your script. Like when you were saying, Jason, I was born as, people are born as and brought up as, and even if they veer from that, that's the core they were taught. And I never was, so I always had different ideas. So one of the books I read, the Sufi book of child raising, that really resounded with me was they had this idea that your spirit, the essence of what you are, is in fact alien, in that you're at, as a metaphor, they use a train station, and you're sitting on the bench waiting for your train. And sitting next to you is another essential being, just their glow, your glow. They just came from Earth. You just came from Planet X. You cannot tell them about Planet X. They cannot tell you about Earth. All you can do is be what you became from that experience. And that is the lesson you get about where you are about to land. And then you go to the parents that theoretically you picked for the lessons you needed to learn.
No, I love that. And I'm going to ask you another question, and you don't have to answer this. Have you ever had a dream, and anyone else can answer too, where you were an alien, where you were not on this earth, or somehow you were in some kind of world that was not the world that we know as Earth.
I had a dream. It's incredible how many years later and how much I remember it. I have a dream where I was with Krishna for all of my not being a deist and believing and some of his wives. And I actually asked, could I go back to Earth for longer? I didn't want to stay. I've always been ambivalent about that dream. I'm like, maybe I should have said yeah. But I did have a dream. Yeah, it was quite quite beautiful, quite wonderful. But yeah.
And I really believe that so many of us have dreams of other universes that we are not even aware of. And sometimes we may not even remember the dreams, because I don't think we're all from here anyway, you know? Some of us are, but some of us, from your poetry and from everyone's poetry in this room today, I think there are a lot of people right here that may not be from Earth, you know?
But, yeah, who was it that said that we're all made from stardust anyway? I just keep thinking of that quote anyway.
I don't know. Do you know who said that? Because you have a line almost like that in your poem Stardust.
Well, I don't know, because I heard a cosmologist. Am I saying it right? I don't mean the ones that put makeup on you. That lecturing, and he was lecturing on the universe. And he said that what we are as humans is the same thing that stars are, with water and a couple of other things. And so that's how I wrote my poem Stardust, was out of hearing this lecture about the universe, you know, and that, you know, we're magnesium, copper, and iron, calcium, and that this is what you find in a star too.
It's beautiful. And there's another poem I really like that you've done. It's called Dreaming Poems. It's absolutely gorgeous. And so I wondered, anyone can answer this too. Have you ever dreamt a poem into existence, or had a poem come to you literally out of nowhere? And it literally landed on your plate and you're like, okay, you know, so this is what the universe is serving. I will take it. So what do you think?
I can say specifically, that's become a practice for me, that the dreams that I have that are most vivid, I have to write out, and often I try to commit those into poems. And there's a poem in the book called "The Apartment" that is just a description of a dream where my mom, who at that point was already gone, is in my apartment where I live right now, dressed as almost like an Orisha in all white. And there is my biological sister who appears, my subconscious shows at random. And my best friend, who I met at work, is calling the telephone, making me hurry up. So there's this sense of panic. So yeah, I feel like every time we're given a dream, we should absolutely write that into, or convert it into a poem. It's material for us to use for that purpose, I guess.
It's like a diary almost. They're wonderful. Absolutely. And they're mirrors into ourselves, because I believe that we are living on this earth, but we are nonlinear and we're multidimensional beings. And so while we're living here, who knows what I might be doing, say, in the eighth dimension, you know? So it's like, I think I've been watching too much Lovecraft Country. but the idea that we are multidimensional, and what I love is that we're looking at ways to express that. I think years ago, people might have been too afraid to say that in poetry. You know, people would have looked at them and said, my God, you were on LSD when you wrote that, huh? But no. So anyone have any thoughts about that dreaming? Because I agree with you, by the way, James, that was beautiful what you said.
Jason, do you write dreams?
You know, I've always had a weird thing with my dreams, because like I don't remember a lot of them, or I only remember them when I wake up, and then they're gone. So it's kind of like I had this faint idea that like I was dreaming something, that it was pretty clear at the moment of waking up, and then just it's gone.
Oh yeah.
So it's like I know I kind of maybe look at poems in a bit of a reverse, of that. I don't know. I think that it's almost like bringing the reality into a kind of like dream state, and I think that's kind of like a part of the way of how I've, tried to approach poems. So it's like maybe like instead of pulling from the dreams, I try to pull the reality back into the dream, and and try to build it from there in a way.
That's a cool statement.
And it was Carl Sagan that it was the star stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
That's why Neil deGrasse Tyson says it a lot, but that's because he loved Carl Sagan. So, but like, yeah. So star stuff. Yeah.
Have you ever had a conversation with someone, and from that conversation, you have a whole poem? It literally, that conversation becomes a poem.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
That's confirmed.
Go on, James.
Oh, just to say yes. My bad. You can keep going.
Yeah, and the manuscript that I'm working on, I had it done, but now I'm redoing it, called Love in the Hunting Season. I have a poem called Snap, and I have one of my BC friends. I have 3 before children friends, so they've known me a long time. And Kat and I were talking about politics, and we were trying not to be demoralized about it. And she went, snap. Do you remember how it was? Remember when we were teenagers and, Black nationalism came in? And she, look, it's like we were Negro on Tuesday and we were Black on Wednesday. She said, just snap. And so I wrote a poem called Snap. And a lot of it was the conversation that we had about how things came about, and so much change was made then, and that it was starting up again now. And that poem absolutely drew. And I started out, Kat said,
I like that.
Of course, nobody but me knows who Kat is. But that's irrelevant. It was just like because I wanted to acknowledge it came from a real conversation.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I'm so grateful to be here. I love poets. I just feel like poets are like the ambrosia. I can't even pronounce the word, of the planet. They're the nectar that we drink in, that makes our lives better, that allows us to see the beauty, to see the realness. You drink it in, you're like, oh my God, that's what I couldn't see. That's what was so important to me. That's what I missed. And sometimes a poem brings that about. It's like things you miss. And listening to all 3 of you today, it was like the things that I had missed showed up in your poems.
And thank you, Kim. And I think we have time for one last question. What's the first thing, speaking of dreaming, what's the first thing you'll do after COVID, Devorah?
Oh, there's going to be an after? That's good news. I don't know, because I've started living again now. I went and saw my granddaughter. I just, I'm very careful. I've got my little antiseptics and my mask, and I had my COVID test, and I'm very careful, but I feel like there's a way that I was becoming, and we become disconnected from one another, that I think is so incredibly unhealthy. So I'm trying to now, at least, I suppose I'll have, if all things go well, I'll be moved, and I have a plan to have an open house. If all goes correctly, I will be in Oakland, and I will have an open house and have people over instead of a person, like that. But I think that's I just want to be with more people who I care about than just 2 or 3 at a time. But I'm trying right now to live more fully, because I think that there's that somewhere in between the idiots that think masks are a political statement and the people that won't leave the one room in their house, there's a middle ground we need to be in. for the transition.
On that note, I would like to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon. Thank you so much, Jason Bayani, James Cagney, Kim McMillon, and of course, Devorah Major. It has been such a wonderful and powerful experience having all of you in the same event. Thank you to everyone who joined us and to the San Mateo County Libraries for hosting. If you enjoyed our event, please consider purchasing or requesting your local library to purchase a copy of Calipia's Daughter by Devorah Major, Locust by Jason Bayani, and Wax for Magnolias in the Hour of Chaos series by James Cagney. Links to purchase are in the chat portion and also on the event page. Thank you so much. Be safe, everyone, and more power to all of you.
All right, thank you. Love you guys.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.